So the Genocide Convention, as it was enacted, defines as genocide acts with the intent to destroy all or part of a national, racial, ethnic, or religious group by one of the following 5 means, or methods, or acts. The first is killing members of the group. This is the most obvious. So large massacres like those in the Taba commune of Rwanda, which involved 2,000 people, or in the Srebrenica enclave of the former, or of Bosnia and Herzegovina, which involved 5,000 to 8,000 people, could therefore constitute genocide under the rulings of international tribunals. But so could smaller massacres, like the ones of 40 to 50 Kosovar Albanians in the town of Rasak in 1999, which led President Clinton, Prime Minister Blair, a number of other prime ministers and presidents to declare a genocide in Kosovo. The Yugoslav tribunal, in what they call the Krstić case, clearly stated that the pattern of conduct constituting ethnic cleansing may be relied upon as part of the intent to commit genocide required by the convention. So based on this reading, many of the signatories to the Genocide Convention have charged genocide after massacres in which most of the victims survived. So for example, at the Nuremberg Tribunal, co-sponsored by many of the states that signed the Genocide Convention, the British Attorney General, the British prosecutor, argued that genocide had occurred in France, Belgium, the Netherlands, Yugoslavia, and Norway, and not just against the Jews in those areas, but against the people, the non-Jewish residents of those areas. After that, genocide has been charged in Nigeria in the late 60s, Pakistan in the early 70s, Iraq in the 1980s and early 1990s, Bosnia in the early 1990s, Kosovo in the late 1990s, and other places, where the vast majority of the group survived in many of those cases. Secondly, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group. That's the second type of act that, with accompanying genocidal intent, may constitute genocide. So the Yugoslavia Tribunal's decision on the indictment of Radovan Karadzic and Ratko Mladic stated that cruel treatment, torture, rape, and deportation constitute serious bodily or mental harm done to members of a group under account of genocide. So torture can be part of the acts making up a genocide prosecution and conviction. The same tribunal has concluded that genocide could be committed by one individual acting alone. In other words, there's no requirement of a government plan or policy to commit genocide, as there is for some war crimes and other crimes. The third type of genocide is, quote, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part. So this is the only time that physical appears, and it qualifies destruction of a group as a result of poor conditions of life. And the Rwanda Tribunal has stated that the means of deliberately inflicting on the group poor conditions of life include subjecting a group of people to a subsistence diet, systematic expulsion from their homes, and deprivation of essential medical supplies below a minimum standard. So incidents like this, where people are driven out of a large area, left without the food they normally would have consumed, the hospital and the clinic they normally would have gone to, and their home that they would have lived in, could constitute this prong or this type of genocide. Fourth type of genocide is imposing measures designed to restrict births within the group. And the Rwanda Tribunal has stated that rape and other sexual violence can constitute this form of genocide because in patriarchal societies, the identity of the child may be determined by the identity of the father. Therefore, removing the child from the group that it otherwise would have been to, reducing the numbers of that group. The fifth type of genocide is forcibly transferring children of one group to another group. So the drafting history of the convention states that the separation of children from their parents results in forcing upon the impressionable young ones a culture and a mentality different from those of their parents. This process tends to bring about the disappearance of the group as a cultural unit. So culture, again, is coming into play. So Lemkin passed away in 1959, and his life illustrated a key fact relating to the prevention of genocide, future genocides. The victims complain about it before the international community does. Lemkin accused the German Empire of genocide in 1943, but the British Empire and the United States didn't do so until 1946. And the General Assembly also voted in 1946, and there wasn't a convention prohibiting genocide until 1948. So the path to recognition, as opposed to impunity, is often a four-step process. There's trial, political condemnation, reparations for the victims, and independence for the victim group. So at the Nuremberg trial, a series of crimes were defined, then summarized in what they call the Nuremberg principles. Aggression, which is starting a war or waging a war in violation of treaties, and crimes against humanity, which include extermination and genocide, as well as torture and other crimes against humanity. Other trials have been held since then. The Iraqi High Tribunal has tried Saddam Hussein and other officials in Iraq for genocide and crimes against humanity. And the International Criminal Court, most recently, reversed the decision of the trial chamber of that court not to indict the president of Sudan for genocide, and the appeals chamber remanded the decision to the trial chamber to reconsider its ruling under the proper legal standard. Because under the original legal standard, which was influenced by Mr. Shabas, President al-Bashir was not guilty of genocide. So then political condemnation. Political condemnation, of course, occurred in the case of the Germans in a very early period. The Armenian genocide was also condemned by the international community virtually at its outset. Other resolutions have been issued by the General Assembly condemning genocide in Yugoslavia and Rwanda. I don't believe they used the word about Iraq, but they condemned the actions anyway. The United States referred to genocide in Iraq in what they call the Iraq Liberation Act in 1998, which implemented funding for Iraqi opposition movements. And it did the same thing for Southern Sudan in the Sudan Peace Act of 2002, referring to genocide in Southern Sudan and condemning it. So reparations occur in the Holocaust. It's well known that reparations were paid both by the Federal Republic of Germany under pressure from the European coal and steel community to pay reparations to Israel directly as a precondition of joining the community. And then subsequently, almost 40 years later, class actions being filed in New York and California seeking reparations from people like Deutsche Bank, the Swiss banks, insurance companies, and the like. More recently in Iraq, Iraq has instituted what they call an Iraq Property Claims Commission for properties taken or destroyed under the Saddam Hussein regime. The Darfur Peace Agreement talks about compensation being paid to the victims in the amount of $30 million. The Comprehensive Peace Agreement of Sudan talks about revenue sharing between North and South, which I don't think the government of Sudan described as reparations, but merely as an end to their policy of basically blockading and not providing any services in the South. But you could describe that as a form of reparations. And finally, independence. So this is probably the most effective means. We know that Armenia became independent from the Ottoman Empire. Israel was established in part due to the Holocaust. The republics of Croatia and Bosnia and Herzegovina, Kosovo is now an autonomous enclave within Serbia. Bangladesh became independent from Pakistan. Kurdistan enjoys autonomy from federal Iraq. Southern Sudan is due to have a
self-determination
referendum on self-determination and independence. I don't know if it's next year.
2011.
Sorry,
2011.
2011. And Darfur, people are making noises about including Darfur within that because the elections currently have been impossible to carry out on a free and fair basis in Darfur. And some people have argued the problem with the resolution of the Rwandan genocide is it left many Hutus of Rwanda and the Congo under Tutsi control, where they've experienced various human rights abuses, including torture. So that is really the path from impunity for genocide to recognition and sanctioning, prevention, and compensation for genocide. It's a path that's not always taken, probably honored in the breach, but we know how to do it. The solution is there. We can't say we didn't know. If we don't do it, it's because we don't want to as humanity, or because the few powerful block the well-meaning majority from doing so. Thank you.